I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is part 6 of my ranking and reviewing the Frank Zappa guitar solos. You might hear thunder in the background. We're in the middle of a lightning storm in the middle of the day here. Don't know if this microphone will pick it up, but if I lose power, you'll never know. But anyways, because I won't upload it. Yeah, so what I'm doing this new series, I'm ranking and reviewing the guitar solos within the context of an album, and then I'm ranking those albums based on just the guitar solos, nothing else. That's the only factor. I was only going to do the ones released after 93 when Frank passed away, but after kind of not being too kind to the last Zappa 88 US 88 show, I decided I would just do all of them because I wanted to do the other 88 releases and say, hey, I actually do like solos from this tour. And so this is, I did make a jazz noise here in the previous video. This is Best Band You Never Heard in Your Life, the second release that focused solely on the 88 tour. 12 solos, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to rank them 12 to 1, and then I'll put the list on the screen just so you can see it for you visual learners. Then I will show you where this album ranks among the other 5 that I've already done. So yeah, that's it, right? All right, let's jump into this. Number 12, Penguin in Bondage. It's just a Penguin in Bondage solo. That's about it. Simple, like 2 run-throughs of the sort of progression. Frank solos, kind of just staying within the confines of Penguin. Not much here. It's not bad. It's not great. It's a Penguin in Bondage solo. Don't know what else to say about that. Number 11, Zoot Allures. I am finding as I'm listening to these 88 shows back to back to back to back and focusing solely on the solos that I think Frank, I don't know if it's Frank or if it's the band, but when the guitar solo vamps go sort of kind of static and kind of flat, you know, in which Frank, it almost feels like here is whatever the rhythmic pattern is, whatever the vamp is down here, and Frank's kind of soloing on top and not going crazy, just kind of floating along right over, you know, the landscape. I just don't find them very intriguing. Part of them has to do with Frank's sounds on this tour. I think it does something to his notes where they almost like blend together in such a way that like none of them stand out unless he's like really holding a note or bending a note. I find that when Wackerman and Tunis, the drummer and bass player, are kind of like more restrained and held back, it just doesn't do as much for me. And this is one of those solos where like, I'm one of those that really likes long Frank solos, and it's almost like having a conversation with Frank and it just never gets tiring, and sometimes he ends up places you're not expecting. I just think this solo goes on a little too long. I think that the rhythm section's kind of underused. I mean, compare these to like the Bozio era Zoot Allures. It doesn't do anything for me. Kind of very nondescript. Yeah, I mean, there are interesting moments throughout. It's still a Frank solo, but in comparison to the rest of the solos on this release, some of which are absolutely fantastic, this one just doesn't do anything for me. And I'm not even sure at this point I'm really a fan of the big band Zoot Allures. Did just listen to a bunch of 75, 76 shows where you have that really skeletal Zoot Allures, and I think it kind of loses something by this point. So number 11, Zoot Allures. Number 10, Cosmic Debris. It's a really good Cosmic Debris solo. He's using that really thin, sort of clean sound that he uses on this tour and gives the middle part kind of a different vibe. It's not as sort of like, you're trying to come at me, fool me type thing, but it's, I don't know, a little chiller, a little more relaxed. I don't know, I like it. It just got good vibes. It works for me a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing spectacular. I can't imagine it's anybody's favorite solo from this album, but it's not bad. And it works really well for Cosmic Debris and that kind of clean sound and not even somewhat less of an attack. Seems like in a lot of Cosmic Debris solos early on, Frank is more in attack mode. This is more of just kind of a chill mode. And I think it works really well. That's number 10, Cosmic Debris. Number 9, I apologize. Hurts my heart to do it too. Even though I will say the next 4 are pretty like back to back to back to back to back. But this is my least favorite of the 4. Inca Roads. I'm accepting the fact that unless Frank is really, really, really going out there or doing something new, these Inca Road solos in '88 just don't do it for me. I mean, the title track to all the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, those title tracks on those albums, those are Inca Road solos from '79. Occam's Razor on One Shot Deal is an Inca Road solo from '79. Listen to those things. Listen to the rhythm section. Listen to Frank. Like, these are supposed to be like just, these Inca Roads should be something different. And this Inca Roads, it has this quiet dignity, I will say. I do think this one is a little bit better than the one on the last US show. There's a quiet dignity to it. I mean, it's got a little bit of spunk that sort of creeps in towards the end, but I just am realizing that this clean tone, this more laid back vibe, this more quiet, contemplative Inca Roads is not what I want out of an Inca Roads. And I'm also realizing, as I'm listening to all these '88 shows, that again, the less work that Tunis and Wackerman are doing, the less interested I am in Frank's solos. It really does seem like those two are helping lift the solos that I think are fantastic to greater heights. I also think his tone, when he gets that mean, heavier, more metal tone, I think Frank is doing it, pulling it off just a little bit better on this tour. But yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I don't know. I try, but it always leaves me a little bit disappointing. Though there are, there are little nice phrases. There's bars in here that work. But for the most part, I do think this one is more of a sort of a cohesiveness about it than that last '88 show. I did rank it slightly higher, but it's on this album, 9th. Number 8, Andy, solid. Frank's in attack mode the whole time. It's a heavy, heavy solo. Not quite as out there as the Buffalo 81, but which I haven't talked about yet. I haven't made a video about that yet. But yeah, it works. It's just a nice, solid, in the middle of the song, Andy solo. It's what you want. You want a little bit of aggression, a little bit of meanness, a little bit of just like going at it while that crazy vamp goes off in the background. And it just works. It's an Andy solo that works. Number 7, Let's Move to Cleveland. This is another example, probably the best example on at least so far that I've come across in '88 of in the '80s, especially when we get to '84, a little bit in '82, '84 and '88, Frank would get to the guitar solo and he would kind of abandon sort of the momentum of the song and like start a new vamp. This Let's Move to Cleveland, the arrangement, the horns, it sounds fantastic. But when we get to the solo section, it's like the momentum is just gone. And then we just kind of wait a little while for like the vamp that he's going to like, the rhythm of the guitar section to establish itself. And then Frank kind of just, I don't want to say he limps in. It's not that bad, but he just kind of, I don't know, just kind of then starts playing. And it just seems like all this momentum that Cleveland has is just kind of lost. And this Cleveland kind of reminds me of the Inca Roads. I think it's a little more cohesive than even the Inca Roads. I think it's definitely got more of a narrative thread, and it feels like a single piece, not something where Frank, let me just solo for 4 minutes and see if something happens. Seems like there's maybe an idea that Frank is toying with the entire time, and by the end of it, it feels like, okay, I understand, or this solo works as a solo piece. But again, it's another one of those instances where I think everything's a little bit more subdued. Tunis, however, has some great moments in it. I think he might save the day, especially in the middle. But it's a good solo. I did find it more satisfying than Inca Roads. It's a little more, whereas the Andy might be a little more satisfying. This is one that over the years, as I've listened to it more and more, it's beginning to pay off a little bit more and more, where I think the Andy one is, yeah, you get what you get. It's good, it's solid, but there's not secrets to be revealed. I still think this solo, maybe I can figure out one day and like more. But for now, yeah, I'm comfortable with 7. Not spectacular, but a solid solo. Number 6, Florentine Pogan, the band. This is a perfect example of what this band does fantastically. They establish a groove. This band can swing. This band can just like make you want to like, if you're a guitar player, there are songs on here. Florentine Pogan is an example. More Trouble Every Day is an example. Heavy Duty Judy is an example. Zombie Wolf, not Heavy Duty, Zombie Wolf is an example where there is just this groove that the band is establishing. And it's like Frank has no choice but to just stay in the pocket and like enjoy the groove because it is so good. And the band is so responsive to what he's doing while at the same time maintaining that groove. And this is a perfect example of that. It just rides, man. You're just like, I'm just going to enjoy this as long as it goes on. Comes in nice and low, kind of gritty in the beginning, but then it just finds its swing and it just goes. But one of the best things about this is Bobby Martin's keyboard work in the back. Just whatever he's playing, kind of always like I get lost in it. It reminds me almost like Steve Winwood, like Traffic. Almost sounds like he's back there just pumping this like almost kind of organ, like fat organ sound, like a juicy blues organ sound. And that keyboard work, so many times Frank is just like holding a note or just playing like the same idea over and over, and those keyboards creep in and just give it a little more, just a little bit of flavor that is absolutely perfect. Number 6, Florentine Pogan. Number 5, More Trouble Every Day. This one has this weird, slow swagger to it. It almost seems like the first, maybe third, maybe half of this solo, Frank's just like, I'm going to play really long, drawn out notes, maybe rip off some little licks, but then I'm going to go back to some noise and some bend and some notes and some swagger while the band is just like laying down this groove. It is a very dramatic, Frank is really dramatic, but the rest of the band just feels like they're having a great time. And that it almost has a defiant nature to it, his guitar playing, and it just works, man. It's just like very bendy, very dramatic, and he's leaning in on the noise. Moments of just kind of craziness, but the band the entire time is just making you feel good. And it just, I don't know, man. It's just a really neat sort of like a bull in a china shop, only the china shop is a dance hall. It's a bull in a discotheque, maybe. I don't know what it is, but there's a neat contrast between what Frank is bringing and what the band is doing. And it just works. And I think one of the neat things, like this is one of the last songs on this release. So it's on side 2 towards the end. And I think one of the neat things about it on this listen is it kind of sounds like no other solo on this release. And some of those grooves that they lay down don't sound like other grooves. And one thing I am realizing that in a well-constructed release, such as this one, where Frank could pick anything from any show, because it wasn't a single show, the 88 show did offer a lot of variety in Frank's solos. And a lot of that goes to what the band is doing. But this is an instance in which the band is just doing what they do really well, and Frank is coming at it in weird angles and this weird aggression, and really fun, neat solo. Really, really enjoy this one. Number 4, The Torture Never Stops. The solo is part 2 on this release. And this is Scott Tunis, Scott Tunis, Scott Tunis, Scott Tunis. Scott Tunis is just like from the beginning, you're like, you cannot ignore his presence. It is just, the beginning of this solo kind of has that Inca, Let's Move to Cleveland, treading water type thing, but it's like an 8-minute solo. And so it's almost like Frank is getting out the preliminaries of a conversation to make sure we all understand the terms, and then we're going to get into the meat of it. And that's kind of what happens. You get maybe 2 minutes where I'm like, okay, it's engaging, but it's really not going anywhere special. Then things start to get interesting. And then about halfway through the solo, about the 4.5-minute mark, all of a sudden we get what feels like a climax, not like a volcanic eruption climax, but this really nice peak that if after 4.5 minutes they had jumped back into the song, it would have been a really nice little moment and a kind of a nice little solo. But then Frank just brings it back down, and just it just gets more sparse. He starts making some weird noises. I think there's some really good scraping of the strings that goes on in this. Again, he starts getting a little bendy, starts throwing in maybe a less aggressive version of what he was doing on More Trouble, but he does that for another 3.5, 4 minutes, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. And it is a really neat, it almost feels like this, 2 different solos, but at the same time, it's almost like Frank had a point to make and he made it halfway through the solo, but he just had more to say and he was just going to keep going on, and it was really engaging and it really worked. And Scott Tunis is there, so all of it's going to sound fantastic no matter what, because Scott's going to make sure it does. But yeah, this is the solo, I think, more than any other on this release, where I was a little not blown away by it at first. My favorite solos by far for Torture, 77 and 78, Rat Tomago, the one on stage one, epic. 5.5, Rat Tomago, 8-minute on Torture, just incredible solos. And this one doesn't quite have that energy, doesn't have that thunder, doesn't have that Bozio or Hearn, just sort of like stadium filling energy. But after many listens, sort of the intricacies of it, me knowing it's going to have this middle peak, and they just kind of saw all of it just works. And this is another one. The longer it goes on, it just gets better. And everything before it gets better because of what follows it. It's, it's Frank's ability to craft a guitar solo that complements each other, so that, where all the different parts work together, but that by the end you're like, yeah, the forest for the trees, all that little phrase stuff. Whatever. Really good solo. Torture Never Stops. Number 3, and yeah, I counted this as a solo, Purple Haze. It's 33 seconds long. It's pure noise. It's Frank. I thought this was Keneally for a while, but the credits clearly say Frank on lead guitar, because it just sounds like an Adrian Belew noise-making 33 seconds right in the middle of this sound check of Purple Haze. They did play Purple Haze once in May. Didn't quite go too well. Was kind of a train wreck. This one is not. This one is fantastic. And yeah, 33 seconds of just pure noise. Frank just going, oh, wow, just like doing his best Hendrix meets Belew, just craziness. Fantastic 33 seconds. Purple Haze. Absolutely love it. Yeah, it's like just a pure shot of adrenaline for half a minute. Number 2, Zombie Wolf. Another one that took me a while to come around to, just because it is that really crystal clean sound that he has on this tour. And if you've heard the Zombie Wolf solos off Overnight Sensation or the one on stage one, those are so absolutely epic that this one seemed underwhelming at first. But then the more I listen to it, the more I like, okay, it's going to be this sort of low-key thing. But that groove, the way the band is playing, that swagger that this has, is so fantastic. And Frank is like so in the pocket. It has somewhat of a swing vibe. Sounds like he's just having a great time. What did I write? I don't know what I wrote. I take notes sometimes on these. Oh, it's that the sound took a while to get. Yeah, the sound took me a while to come around, but now that I'm in it, it just like the whole time you just want to be like in it, just like grooving, and it is so much fun. Whereas like those other two, Frank's just like, there's this great groove underneath, and Frank's just like wreaking havoc on top, like lots of noise. Now he's just like in the pocket, he's riding it. It's absolutely just fantastic. Zombie Wolf. And number 1, when I bought this album, I think it came out my freshman year in college. Took it back to I think I was living in a tiny little room at that point, put this on. By the end of the first song, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best release ever. The solo on this, Heavy Duty Judy, one of my favorite things ever. It starts off with Frank just going, meow, just holding this piercing, screaming note, and then he just takes off. It is an absolutely metal tear of a solo. And Chad Wackerman, oh my gosh, Wackerman is absolutely incredible on this. Like, Wackerman and Tunis the entire time. Tunis has these songs where he steps up. Wackerman has these songs where he steps up. This is the Wackerman, Frank Zappa, going at it solo. It is so fantastic. There is just so many amazing licks. There's this whole part where Frank's building the tension in the middle of it. It is just like, by the end of it, you're just like, whew, man, that was exhilarating. Like, whereas Stinkfoot would start a show like, hey, man, I'm going to be about here for about 2.5 minutes maybe. Got a whole bunch of solos. Just enjoy the ride. We're going to ease into this. Heavy Duty Judy's like, it's like you're on a roller coaster and you're like, all right. I don't know if you've ever been to, probably not, if you have. There was a roller coaster at Walt Disney World called Aerosmith. It was like a rock and roll adventure. It was around Aerosmith. I went there with my family years ago. But it's not one of those where you like take off and you go up and then you go down. You're like going slow and all of a sudden you just go boom and you take off. That's what this solo is like. You're like, all right, we're at the end of heavy duty, and then we're just off. Frank holds that note, meow, and then just gone. Exhilarating, exhilarating, exhilarating. But yeah, my number one, Heavy Duty Judy. There they are right there. Those are the 12 as I rank them. Take a good look at them. Gander at them. Is that a word? Gander at them. And then, because in about 5 seconds, I'm going to put the list on, which shows you where I rank that album. And yes, right there. It is my second favorite album at this point in time as far as solos go. I like Make a Jazz Noise Here as an album. That was in my top 10 of my all-time Frank Zappa during his lifetime albums. Best Band was not far behind, but it was. But the solos on this, I think, are better overall. Heavy Duty Judy, Zombie Wolf, That Torture Never Stops. I mean, The Purple Haze, like those four are pretty awesome solos. There's good stuff on Make a Jazz Noise Here, but this one I do think is just... I think overall has some better quality. And really, other than like the closing Penguin Embodied solo, or the one that was 12 on this list, none of them are ranked that lowly. Like I can find something to like in almost all of them. The Penguin Embodied one is the only one that kind of just seems almost obligatory. But yeah, a really, really, really solid release as far as Frank Zappa guitar solos go. So anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Appreciate all that stuff. Let me know your favorites. Let me know what you think about my thoughts. All that stuff. You know how it works. Subscribe, like, share, comment. And most importantly, go listen to music. Go listen to Frank Zappa. Best guitar player ever, I would argue. But anyways, thanks for watching. Peace. And the thunder went away. So yay. Talk to you later. Bye.